Hello and welcome to our webinar, AASL's Best Tips and Practices for Remote Learning. I'm Maggie Reagan, Senior Editor at Booklist and Booklink. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. To resize the slides, look to the magnifying glass icons located to the left of the slides. There you can increase or decrease the size and select how you'd like the slides to appear. If you lose audio or would like to change the way you're connected, look at the bottom of your screen for a circle with 3 dots. Clicking that icon will open a menu with an audio connection option. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the right side of your screen is a control panel with an area at the bottom for Q&A. Simply type your question into the field and click Send. Attendees can see questions asked during the webinar and the answers provided. As an aside, we will most likely have time for a Q&A at the end of this webinar, and you can also utilize this box to ask any questions of the presenters. So if you have questions during the webinar, enter them here and we'll get to them at the end. A link to today's slides was sent directly to you from WebEx at the start of the webinar, but you can also download it at any time by copying the URL on this screen into your web browser. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive a follow-up email containing links to today's slide presentation, certificate of completion, and video recording. One last reminder before we begin, that during this difficult time, all of Booklist content and all digital editions are totally free and open to all. Now let's kick off this webinar. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Angela Arnold, General Manager at OverDrive Education, Suzanna Panter, Program Manager from Tacoma Public School Libraries, Melissa Jacobs, System Director from NYC Department of Education, NYC School Library, and Sylvia Norton, Executive Director of AASL. We'll kick things off with Angela Arnold. Based at OverDrive's Cleveland headquarters, Angela leads a team of account execs, account managers, and librarians who build customized reading experiences for K-12 schools and districts. Prior to joining OverDrive, she delivered sales and marketing solutions for mid-market, emerging, and enterprise businesses. Arnold brings knowledge of inbound lead generation, sales enablement, and product development in a variety of B2B and B2C contexts. She holds a Master of Science and Information degree from the University of Michigan School of Information. Angela, thanks so much for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Hey, thanks. I'm Angela Arnold, General Manager of OverDrive Education, and I thank you for spending your time with us today, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to Sora. Sora, the student reading app, is the best way for students to access your school's digital collection of ebooks and audiobooks. Supporting reading online or offline on any device, OverDrive Education partners with more than 25,000 districts worldwide to help them meet learning objectives using digital content. We do. OverDrive serves the K-12 market with Sora and the public library market with the Libby reading app, so you may know OverDrive that way. We're also home to the largest digital content catalog in the world. Over these last weeks, we've heard a lot from our school partners about how attitudes have shifted regarding remote learning. I heard one educator say that remote learning could be part of our new normal. In the same way schools prepare with fire drills, we would prepare for remote learning days. We've heard parents having to redefine what a good day at school looks like. It used to be defined by interactions with friends and teachers, with all homework completed at the end of the day. And today, a good day is quiet time spent reading and not arguing with siblings. One teacher even called what we're doing now crisis teaching. Across the stories we're hearing from our school partners, engagement is emerging as a top concern and may become a key performance indicator for many schools as they further embrace remote learning. Indeed, engagement is a prerequisite for remote learning. And this is good news for our school partners because Sora excels in engaging key groups. For students, we offer an unparalleled one-tap reading experience that was named one of Time Magazine's best inventions of 2019. For librarians, we offer millions of ebook and audiobook titles from thousands of publishers in a variety of pricing. And for educators, we work with how they work. We provide customization and integration at every step of the way, from single sign-on implementation class sets and title selection to training, marketing, and integrations with the tools they already use like Google Classroom, Clever, and Schoology. So with that, I'd like to thank you again for your time and hand off back to our moderator.
School librarians, a division of ALA. A former high school librarian, Sylvia was a state coordinator for school library technology planning and E-rate in the state with a statewide one-to-one computing initiative. She also oversaw school librarian internships for a graduate program. Take it away, Sylvia.
Thank you. Hello. I'm so pleased to have this opportunity, thanks to OverDrive Education, for Booklist and AASL to collaborate about the important role of school librarians in these times. School librarians have always been problem solvers for inquiry, curators. Their leadership in teaching and learning has been reinforced by what we are seeing and hearing as schools close, and school librarians stepped forward to meet the needs of all learners, teachers, students, and each other. This leadership by school librarians was immediately apparent when we sent out a special edition of the AASL Digest with a link to a ASL town hall, The Show Must Go Online, and more than 500 school librarians gathered on March 24th for the first one. We are continuing these, and they have, as school librarians have shared their ideas, their challenges, and concerns for their students. ASL is also gathering snapshots of K-12 education, and the work of school librarians is evolving during this crisis. The first school closure survey, which ran May 30th to April 6th, had responses from all 50 states and every school setting and grade level. At the time, more than 70% of the respondents expected to return to school during the school year, and now we're finding that most have closed until the next one. The responses did show that access to technology for the distance learning that we're expecting with students is showing that there's issues with equity. And equity is so important to school librarian beliefs. Yes, school librarians are deeply involved with distance learning, and they're holding office hours virtually and providing online resources. But they're also finding a variety of ways to communicate with their students, their fellow teachers, administrators, and parents, and to ensure that teaching and learning continues. A second survey ended April 6th, and the snapshots that will soon be available. You will be able to find a report on the snapshot on ASL's KQ blog. For more in-depth stories of the way school librarians are leading in a pandemic, read the recent posts and sign up for email alerts about future ones. The posts are rich with great ideas and shared thoughts. Thanks now to hear more from Suzanna, Panter, and Melissa Jacobs as they share their work in their school districts.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. Our next presenter will be Suzanna L. Panter. Suzanna is the program manager for school libraries in Tacoma, Washington. She has over 16 years of experience as a national board-certified elementary educator, award-winning school librarian, and district library administrator. Suzanna is a Lilliard Fellow, a member of the AASL Board of Directors, and active member of the Future Ready movement. She has published articles in Knowledge Quest, School Library Journal, and the School Library Connection, as well as presented at numerous state and national conferences. Suzanna has also spoken at Access WEDU, TXLA, and was featured in Publishers Weekly as an expert in school librarianship. Thanks so much for joining us, Suzanna.
Thank you for having me. So I'm the library program manager in Tacoma, Washington, which is 35 miles south of Seattle. So we were very much on the front lines of this epidemic. The week of March 6th in Seattle was the NCCE conference, which is our local Northwest Educational Technology Conference. And so I had lots of librarians that were signed up to go, and I also was signed up to go during that week in Seattle. But it was also the week where Amazon and Microsoft and some of our biggest tech employers asked all of their employees that were able to work from home. This definitely set up some red flags for us. So my mother is immune compromised, so I decided not to attend that conference on that week. But it kept us all really vigilant in trying to figure out what was going to happen next. The week next was the week where we learned that we were going to close. So we had about a day's notice. The last day of school for students was March 13th. We learned that on March 12th, so we didn't have very much time to prepare. We did what many of you did across the country. We did a Clear the Shelves campaign, and in every school that was able, tried to make sure their students had access to all of the books that they could possibly carry home. That was very successful, and we did get to clear many shelves. But our district also does not have full-time school librarians in elementary. So it was because we only had one day notice, some of those students that were in schools that did not have a full-time school librarian in their building were unable to access those materials. So like Sylvia said, access and equity is something that this pandemic is just making bigger, definitely putting the sunlight on. Our district is a city district. We have a 60% free and reduced lunch. It's a much smaller city than New York. I think we have about 200,000 residents, but it is an urban environment. We do not have a one-to-one program, so none of our students have devices provided by the district at home. We do not have a learning management system, but we are a Microsoft district. So we use Teams through Microsoft 365. We haven't really used it too much with students, but we did use it as staff. And as a library staff, we use it extensively because we are all in different buildings. So our librarians were very much ahead of the teachers in the knowledge of use of Teams. Because we are not a one-to-one district, and because a lot of our students don't have access to internet or to devices, we are not doing live teaching in our district. Our teachers are expected to provide 1 to 3 hours of work per subject a week for our students. And they're also providing packets of work that students can pick up at each of our middle schools, which they also may pick up lunch and breakfast. We're trying to make sure that the activities that we provide are activities that mirror the work that is happening on the packets. But our teachers are not preparing the packets. Those are being prepared by the district at the district level. So our teachers are supposed to be giving all these activities digitally. And we have a robust bunch of librarians that are certified Microsoft Innovative Educators. And that's a certification that you get through Microsoft that basically says you know how to use these tools for education. So we really have become technology leaders in our district prior to this, and now we're being relied upon even more. It's very important as a librarian that your administrators understand that you should be the library leader in your, the technology leader in your school. So this is definitely the case for most of our teacher librarians. And with their knowledge, we are working very hard to help our teachers with all of these new tools and the environments that they are with. Our school librarians are not required to prepare those lessons in addition to helping the teachers. They are just required to collaborate, just like we're doing in person with the teachers. So getting to tools. I'm sure you are all just as overwhelmed as we are with the generosity of many of these education companies out there saying, hey, you can have free access to all of our premium tools. And I'm sure you're getting bombarded with all of those emails as I am. One thing we tried to do right away was to really curate the tools that we want to use. We made sure not to pick tools that are ones that we wouldn't wish we could buy ourselves. We don't want to overwhelm our teachers and families with just a whole bunch of links and saying, hey, go for it, play around, find what you want. Or it's just so overwhelming. As you know, as a librarian, it's overwhelming for you to learn it all. So can you imagine being a parent at home with two children and having to work from home if they're lucky enough to be working, to have to learn all of these tools? It's very, very much a noise is kind of what I'm calling it. So we were very, very critical in looking at what tools we would like to give to our students. And we also wanted to make sure that any of those easy access tools are truly easy access and don't take a million clicks to get to or 500 different logins to get to. So if it was too difficult to navigate within the first few minutes, we just crossed it off our list of what we were going to provide, even though they were technically free. We also had all our librarians make tutorials for the new resources and the resources we already had. And we put those videos right on our website with the direct links to all of the tools. So teachers, students, and parents could walk through quick and easy how to get around each of those tools. Right away, we also instituted coffee chats. So our very first weeks, we had a coffee chat on Friday where our leadership team, our library leadership team, which is made up of 7 librarians, 3 elementary, 2 middle, and 2 high, led these wonderful chats with librarians on just how they're going. What's going on? How are you feeling? What do you need help with? It's really important in this time that we use it to keep connecting with each other and making sure we're reaching out to all of our staff. During that time, we also talked about professional development. And that's something that I think is really exciting about this time, is because we are granted some extra time to grow. So we wanted our librarians to come out of this pandemic feeling stronger in their work. Our leadership team developed asynchronous classes that we posted in Teams. They're classes on just what are the great teacher librarian professional development resources that are out there right now. So there's a class just having them explore those resources, like the free resources from School Library Journal, AASL, School Library Connection, Every Library, EdWeb. There's lots of great professional development out there already. So one of the classes we developed was just having librarians make a plan and think about what are those things that they want to brush up on. We also made classes on diverse books, media literacy for elementary and secondary, data and advocacy, because as we know, we can't go a day without advocating for our jobs and our position. And of course, that's going to be more and more important as a changing educational landscape. And virtual readers advisory, and also social action. So these are ones that our leadership team was like, hey, I would be really excited about doing a professional development on this topic. And these professional developments are made in Teams using the Class Teams feature, and they're posted as assignments. And each assignment has a note catcher that goes with it, and that note catcher gets sent to me, and I get to look at it and give feedback on it, and then have a kind of an idea as a leader of what are the things that my librarians want to learn more about. It's been really exciting to see the growth already in a lot of our school librarians. We're also doing some live professional development on SEL in the elementary library, on how to make websites using the new Destiny Discover web pages. And we also had a PD of just, hey, what you doing? Where our leadership team talked to everyone about what they're doing right now to help support their teachers. So PD is really big in our district. And all of these PDs are teacher librarians get clock hours, and they also, in some cases, get paid to take them, which is very exciting. Well, looking to the future, right now, we're thinking a lot about logistics. We do have some budget money left over for this year. We don't know what that looks like for next year. So we had to make changes in purchasing to allow book orders to be shipped to the librarian's home because none of the buildings are open for things to be received. So this is working out okay, except we do have some vendors that are choosing not to ship to homes right now, which is frustrating. But that's also helped us open up opportunities for our community. We are working very closely for our local independent bookstore, in which we are able to use our budget money at the bookstore, and the bookstore will hold the orders until we are ready to open. So that also helps our local community as well. But we're also thinking about what's coming next. How are we going to even get back those books? A lot of my librarians question what the process would look like. And we're definitely taking into consideration the IMLS and CDC guidelines that say that we should not be touching these books that return for 24 hours. So we're trying to think what that's going to look like, even though we absolutely have no date of return. All school districts are closed for the remainder of the year in Washington state. And we can't even think about a way of getting back materials until our stay-at-home order is lifted. But it doesn't stop us wondering and thinking about what's going to happen, because we know it's going to have to happen fast. Would we have to put the books in the bins for 24 hours and then check them in? How would we receive payments? Are we going to be able to take cash payments or check payments? What are those, different logistical things that we always did? How are we going to have to do those differently? I think it's really important to think about those things. But again, it's also really important to keep connecting with each other about how we're feeling and what they see coming down the pike too. One thing we instituted is that all of the librarians can book direct meetings with me, where we will have one-on-one team meetings to just chat. Sometimes it's me helping them with their sway. Sometimes they're just asking questions like logistical things like shipping. And sometimes we just want to talk and just connect. Particularly, I think, in our profession, we have a lot of people that, are people persons. And I think that the missing of the children and the missing of the day-to-day schedule is wearing on a lot of us. So really being intentional about connecting with each other has really helped us through this whole process. There are a lot of things in our future that we just don't know, and we have to be okay with that. And I think we're all just kind of figuring it out as we go. No one's ever been through this before, whether you're in a public library or a school library. So having opportunities like today to connect with other people across the country and connecting on our own has really helped the process. And I think it's definitely something that we're all learning how to navigate this together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suzanna. Next up, we'll hear from Melissa Jacobs. Melissa is the Director of Library Services for the NYC Department of Education, the New York City School Library System. Melissa started her career as an elementary school librarian and then spent 14 years as a coordinator for library services. Melissa has been named a Library Journal Mover and Shaker and has contributed to School Library Journal, Knowledge Quest, Teacher Librarian, and School Library Connection. In her spare time, she enjoys relaxing with her husband, 2 daughters, 2 orange cats, Shawini and Beta Fish. Take it away, Melissa.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much to AASL and to Booklist for organizing this webinar. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you and share some of the best practices that we have in New York City. Thank you, Suzanna, for setting the stage for today's conversation. I think that it is remarkable how many things that we are replicating in New York City. And it also talks to how quickly librarians can transition their practice and make changes to the work that they're doing. So when this started to impact New York City, we started to realize that school librarians were able to continue to provide programming and resources to their students. And although librarians were coming up with ideas, we needed a way to capture this information for the entire field. In New York City, we had a document that is built on the New York State School Library Media Program rubric, and it allows us to look at certain focus areas, including creating a climate conducive to learning, instruction, informational resources and delivery, all of the different focuses that librarians spend time delivering and working on. And we looked at this and said, okay, we can do these in school, but we can also do these practices remotely. And how does each of these skills, each of these responsibilities translate into a remote practice? How do we continue to provide this level of services to our students when they're home in isolation at home? So looking at creating a climate conducive to learning, that may look very different, but it's still possible to develop an online classroom, an online remote library that allows communication, that provides opportunities for students, and creates a third space for students to communicate, connect with librarians, and connect with one another. So by creating an environment that's conducive to learning, we're looking at curating websites, we're looking at making sure our catalogs are user-friendly. These are all things that we should be doing and do on a regular basis. This is an opportunity to also look at the work and the digital platforms that we provide to our students and to our teachers and say, is this working? Now is an opportunity to fine-tune the resources and what that digital portal that you've created for your students, how it functions. So look at the library website. Is it easy to use? Are students finding ebooks that you have available to them? Are they finding digital audiobooks? And if not, have you curated these things in the past? Why not? Because these are resources that we should have available to our students, and not just to meet the needs in a remote environment, but to meet the different learning styles and different abilities of all students. And so if you do have an opportunity to continue to curate resources, now's the time to expand your collection of ebooks, expand your collection of digital audiobooks, and expand the multiple languages that you have available and make accessible to your students. You can also put online book displays together and continue to support and provide encouragement and guidance for your students. I've read several articles on providing lists of and encouragement for independent reading on joyful reads. We want to escape our isolation and our pandemic right now. And escaping in a book that leads to joy and that leads to good feelings is the perfect place to do. And one thing you need to think about is we know about the third space in the library and what that physically looks like. Being respectful to others, having an environment that has displays for all types of students, making it physically accessible. But we need to start to think, how does that look in remote environments? How do we continue to provide that virtual third space that will invite our students back where they want to come back and visit again? We're born collaborators. From when we start our MLS programs or MLIS programs, we start by learning about collaboration and working with teachers. This is an opportunity to reach out to those teachers in your school that you may or may not have relationships with and lend additional support. Offer to co-teach. If you're in Google Classrooms, ask if you can join those Google Classrooms with them. If you don't have an opportunity to join the Google Classrooms, start setting up your own classrooms and invite them in. Provide professional development to them. Curate resources and make collections of resources that can supplement and provide guidance for the curriculum that they're doing in the classroom. Also, not everybody is up to a stellar understanding of copyright. Understanding and helping your teachers understand that it's not okay just because you could access it and find a copy, a PDF of a book online, doesn't mean that you should be able to share that in a Google Classroom. There are copyright rules, and we as librarians have a better understanding of this, and we should be helping our teachers understand how to protect copyright and how to protect ourselves in breaking copyright rules. We also work with authors and publishers on a continual basis. This is their livelihood, and we want these authors, these illustrators, these publishers to be in business at the end of the pandemic, and we want them to continue to thrive afterwards. This is our gift to them by helping them have access to our students and by helping our students have access to their materials by respecting copyright. Build your own set of skills with different meeting platforms like Zoom and Teams, and try to remember how to transition from one to the other, providing support to your teachers. Help them, help your teachers, help your administrators understand the ins and outs of these tools and how to use them to better enhance the instruction that's being provided to your students. Organize professional development, book groups, professional book groups, different types of platforms that can be shared. Look at Canva, look at teaching books, look at all the digital tools that are available to you. Many of them, as Suzanna mentioned, are available free now. And please use your skills to curate, evaluate, and find reliable tools that you know are not going to go away at the end of the pandemic. School libraries equal equity. This is true 5 years ago, 20 years ago. This is true today, and this will be true tomorrow. It is becoming more and more evident of the inequities that exist in society because of this pandemic. Those that did not have devices, those that did not have access to print, are the kids that are falling not just 2 months behind, not just 6 months behind, but are falling even further than that because they do not have that opportunity to interact with their teachers on a daily basis. Students that have learning needs, students that need the social interaction of their peers and need the support of their teachers, they're falling behind as well. And we need to make sure that our school libraries are there to assist them during this time and after this pandemic. Be accessible to your patrons, and that doesn't mean just your students. That means your families also. Make sure that your families, the parents that you're serving, know that you're available to them as well. Help manage your students' interests and needs. You can still provide readers guidance, readers advisory. Do it via email. Set up office hours with your kids and make sure that they know that you're there. How do we create a culture of literacy? This is something that we do in person, and we make sure that we capture our teachers reading. We can still continue to do this online. We could still continue to do this virtually. Capture your teachers reading across with pictures, with Instagram, with social media. Make it known that this is not just for them, but this is for all of us to get through this. Provide programming for your families. Host a game night. Host a literacy night. Host different types of activities online. Things that engage parents in the learning of their kids. And be very conscious of the social and emotional needs of students. We're all traumatized right now. Some more than others. And we're not going to know what this trauma really looks like for months, if not years. I remember living through 9/11 in New York City. It took a very long time to heal from that. I remember also living through Hurricane Sandy in New York City. It took months, if not years, to recover from that. And we are still, in some ways, recovering from the trauma of that experience. This is a worldwide experience, and it is impacting students, families, teachers, educators, our colleagues, our friends in all different ways. And we need to be conscious of how that impacts us at work. We might be coming to the table with our A game, but some, if not others, are not coming to the table because they have been traumatized, they are healing, they are recovering from COVID-19. So there are a lot of questions that I still worry about and that I started worrying about prior to COVID-19. How do we build relationships, new relationships? Before this happened, I always think about connecting with community partners, connecting with new organizations, connecting with families, connecting with graduate schools. But now we have an opportunity to build other types of relationships. We have an opportunity to increase the collaborative partnerships that we have in our schools. But once we have those relationships, how do we sustain this coming out of the pandemic? How do we look at these relationships in the future? And what can they do to help us build strong school library programs that meet the needs of students across the country? How do we continue these conversations after this worldwide pandemic? Our profession as librarians, as school librarians, has been in dire straits for a while. We need to bring and to recruit new, strong librarians to the field. And this is something that in New York City we've been working on for a very long time. We work with graduate programs. We're recruiting new people into the profession. We've provided tons and tons of professional development, resources and tools. And we're getting to the point where our numbers are starting to look really, really good. I'm very excited to report that we have 2 cohorts going now through graduate school, and we have a new class of librarians entering the profession. But how do we continue to build our profession after this? How do we continue to survive and build our profession with little to no funding? Because we might recover physically and emotionally from COVID, but it's going to take us a long time to build back to the level of financial support that we have in the profession. And that's going to take a lot of creativity as librarians to continue to provide support to our students and make sure that school libraries provide an equitable education to all. And I think it's time to open up to questions.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And thank you, everyone. Now that we've heard from our amazing panel, we're ready to hear from all of you. So on the right side of your screen is a control panel with an area at the bottom for Q&A. Some of you have already begun asking questions, and we will get to all of those in just a minute. But if you would like to continue asking questions, please type those right into the field and click send. Attendees can see all of the questions asked during the webinar and all of the answers provided. So if we don't have time to get to your question today, everyone will get to those and we'll send out the answers over the next couple of the days. But for the time being, let's dive right in. So everyone, some of these questions are for specific people, especially Suzanna and Melissa, but some of them are going to be for all of you. So feel free to jump in whenever you have an answer. But let's kick off with some specific ones. So Suzanna, a couple people were interested in you getting a little more specific about some of the professional development sites that you use. So they're wondering if you had any special favorites. If you could basically just talk a little bit more about some of those tools that you use specifically in your day-to-day.
Sure. So many of the professional organizations and different professional agencies that we use as school librarians are offering a lot of their content right now open for free. So School Library Journal has all of their content open for free. So there's lots of great articles there. AASL has made parts of their professional development area. It's called All, available to people with webinars and articles. And also the Knowledge Quest blog site is fantastic because it's always open and free and it's timely. It's updated daily with new blogs. Also, every library has a bunch of webinars that you can register and watch for free. EdWeb is also a great place for educational webinars that you can watch for free with signing up. And School Library Connection, we have a subscription to the digital version of School Library Connection that has different webinars and workshops on it, as well as their articles, which is really, really helpful. But they also, I think, have opened up some of those for free right now as well. So we have really just been scouring out there, going back to our favorite PD places and using them to help build PD for our teachers, librarians. But also, we have made PDs specifically for our folks as well.
Great. And we actually just had a follow-up to that question. And that someone says that the feedback that they get is that families are overwhelmed with all of the tools. And they're wondering, how do you balance the desire to share resources with that overload?
I think you have to be really strict with yourself. Again, we look at them as, would I buy this if I had the funds? And unfortunately, in my place where we are right now, a lot of those products are bought by curriculum and instruction, which is a different department than what I'm in. So these are things that we would love to have, like Pebble Go. We would love to have that, but I can't have that. So I don't have the budget for that, but I'm hoping that maybe with parents liking it because I got it for free, that maybe curriculum instruction will buy it for us next year. So I really looked at, hey, what do I really would love to have all the time? And I put those out there first. And then also, again, what are those things that take a long time to get to? And I'm really looking at things from a district level, not an individual school level. We have 52 schools, so we want things that are kind of universal and easy for everyone to access. If there's different logins that they have to do in order to access the information, I'm not going to put it up there. If it's a one-click and they get in and the password's embedded in the link, then, oh, okay, maybe I'll put it up there. So really, you have to be judicious because, as you know, your inboxes are getting just as flooded as mine with all of these great companies saying, hey, use my product, use my product. But we also need to also be very much aware of data privacy. So we don't use any products that any of our kids have to log into. So that's another filter that you can do, because we don't want any of their data to be used. So in the library side, it's not so common because most of the things we're looking at are databases or things like BrainPop. They're offering their services for free. I just got the generic version because I didn't want them to have to set up accounts and do all of the things that the premium version would do. So talking with the vendors is really helpful too. If you find one you really like, but you're worried about the data or you don't like the login. I've had one that I was like, hey, I really want to use this, but I would like the login to be the same generic login that all of my students use for other databases to keep it simple. And they have, you know, it takes a day or two, but most of them have gone through and made sure that I had unique URLs for that.
I think also to add to that is the idea of what it's being used for and what the need is. One of the biggest needs in New York City, and I would imagine, Suzanna, this is true for you as well, is getting multiple copies of books for classrooms to provide, and also to provide resources for independent reading. And so a lot of the book resources, book platforms that we've been sharing have been meeting those needs. I'm very reluctant to push out information just because it's free to librarians and to families, because I want to be able to evaluate. I agree with the privacy and testing it out before sharing it out, but I also think that we need to think about the sustainability of these resources, and I would rather not pull the rug out from everybody in September and say, okay, we don't have anything available right now. So we're also looking at the databases that are provided for the state and using this as an opportunity to get our schools up and running on using the databases that are available. And we have a large suite of databases from Gale and Encyclopedia Britannica, because these are resources I'm hoping will not go away, even with budget cuts.
Great, thank you so much. Melissa, for you, we had a lot of questions about online book displays. People are wondering what formats you're using to create those, and wondering if you can provide any examples.
So I'm a big user of LibGuides, and we have built a variety of different types of guides that display books on our LibGuides. We have specialized collections. And the great thing about LibGuides, and yes, it is a paid platform, but it's very easy to type in an ISBN and the cover of the book comes up. And so it's fairly easy to curate resources and collections together in that way. I also think it depends on the different types of OPACs that our librarians have. We're moving over to Destiny Discover and are able to show the covers of the books. I think on Google Sites, you can put collections together. Having that visual search is really important for our students to see the cover rather than just see a title.
And also we had a few people who are wondering if you could expand on Joyful Reads.
Say that one more time.
Sorry, we had a couple people who are wondering if you could expand on Joyful Reads.
Joyful Reads. Well, Joyful Reads are the ones that the mother doesn't die at the end of the book. Or the disease of the week, the kind of books that I grew up reading. You know, we lose ourselves in books, and sometimes we work through our own problems when we're reading about characters. And right now in the moment, you know, to read about morbidity and mortality and death and dying and you know, there's a lot of YA titles there that are just, you know, they pull at your heartstrings. Now might be a time to find those books that are warm and happy and romantic and make you feel good. And for me, I read cookbooks. I like cookbooks. Cookbooks don't have an enemy in them. And cookbooks don't have bad things other than calories. But they also have a story in there as well. And so for me, joyful reads are my cookbooks. But for kids, it might be, there are books that are just lighthearted and funny and humorous, and I think those are joyful reads, books that they give our kids a glimmer of hope that this is not going to be our forever.
Thank you so much for that. So we have a couple of questions from people who are looking for different ways to get multiple copies of books or paper books. One person has a school who would like her to provide a professional resource development by hosting a book club. And then someone else says that she's has invested more in ebooks at the start of the shutdown, but that their use has not been super high. She says, I'm promoting Epic and OverDrive through public libraries, but is also looking for a safe way to get paper books to kids. So this is sort of a question for everyone. They're looking for recommendations for ways to get multiple copies of books or safe ways to get paper books to kids.
We have not figured out a way in New York City to get paper books to kids, where there are packets that are being mailed to kids' homes for those that have not had devices, and those packets are getting, UPS mail. I think for us, there's a lot of Title I schools, and Title I schools have access to First Book online. And if you do have access to First Book, you can request multiple codes that belong to a specific book. So you could get up to like 500 copies of a title. If anyone has a way of figuring out physical copies of a book to kids, I would love to hear it, but we don't know how to do that just yet in New York City.
For the same in Tacoma, it's just we had questions from our teachers that, hey, I want to do a novel study, and so the librarian's like, how are they going to do a novel study? And you know what, guys, they're not. And it has to be okay, and helping our teachers understand that they can't teach the way that they taught before. They can do a read aloud if they're following the publisher's guidelines. Maybe that's what they could do for a novel study, but there's just no possible way for us to have books for every student. And the ebook question, I wonder what this is going to be like in the future, but as all the studies have shown, students don't like ebooks, and if they had the ability to not have an ebook and have a physical copy book, they would much rather pick a physical copy book. And it's very difficult, I think, for our administrators to understand that, because they're like, hey, there's no loss, and people can read them at any time. And right now they are 100% a blessing. Thank you, OverDrive. Because they are keeping us all sane right now. But when you're talking particularly in elementary, but even, my husband is a high school librarian, even his kids much rather have that paper copy because they are staring at screens all day long. So I think that is something that is going to be a very big hurdle for us moving forward if this becomes kind of a cyclical event in the future.
Hey, this is Angela. And I wanted to jump in on that. I agree with that. I think that ebooks can be very challenging, especially for kids who have been on a screen all day. I think the original question was about simultaneous use, and that is something that we support both with purchase models and through our class sets purchase model as well that way with assignment titles. But I think going to your other point about, the preference there, we see mixed data about that. For example, it depends on the reader. Like our younger readers prefer read-alongs. Some students like audiobooks, and I think that digital books offer just more options for kids. I wouldn't say that there's a silver bullet. It's more like, as educators, we got to work on silver buckshot. It's a variety of solutions.
And I'll add to that. I'm exploring digital audiobooks over an ebook at this point in time, especially for middle and high school. I think that it's a lot easier to engage our kids with audio than just reading on a screen. And I know personally, I'm drawn to the voice more than I am drawn to reading one more thing on a screen after a day's work these days.
I 100% agree with that, Melissa. I think audiobooks are definitely that bridge that really would get kids onto the digital platform.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to have to, learn how, we're also grappling with the idea of how do we lend materials out in the fall and get them back and clean them. And, this is going to be something that we're going to question for quite some time. So, even if we were able to figure out a print book distribution, I think the idea that those would be a giveaway and not something that we want back right now is very different than going back to lending and borrowing materials to students. We have to figure out how to clean all the manipulatives that we lend out, because there's more to just lending of books that our librarians do.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for all of these incredible questions and answers. It looks like we have used up all of our time for this Q&A, but if we did not get to your question, these all will be sent out to our presenters. So if we weren't able to answer everything, but we will do what we can to send these all out to our presenters. We'll provide answers after the webinar along with a list of resources. So you should get a follow-up in a few days on everything. I'd like to pass us back over to Sylvia Knight-Norton since she can summarize a few AASL happenings. So Sylvia, take this away.
Thank you, and thank you to Suzanna and Melissa for painting a picture of school librarians in these times. We may be in a crisis, but I'm actually inspired by the opportunities that I've heard today. I do want to remind you change the slide, I do want to remind you that ASL has a number of opportunities to gather data that will help to show the value of school librarians, and also a way to strengthen our community of school librarians as we share. So I'll remind you to register for the next town hall, which is this Thursday, April 30th at 2 p.m. You also should subscribe to the email alerts for the post to the KQ blog so that you can continue to hear more stories and information such as you've heard today. And also that we will have another snapshot survey going out. It will open May 5th, so do look for that and participate in that, because that is going to be valuable data in a lot of ways. My thanks again to OverDrive Education for recognizing the value of school librarians and making this webinar possible.
Angela, go ahead and close us out. Thanks so much. Go ahead, Angela.
Thanks. And the good news is that your district can enjoy hundreds of books at no cost. I don't say free because these books have market value and they're made available through special arrangements, but just kind of looking at what's currently available at no cost in Sora includes the Sora Starter Collection, which has premium titles like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Public Library Connect is an exclusive Sora feature that lets students use and browse and check out age-appropriate ebooks and audiobooks from their local public library using their school sign-on credentials. So with this partnership enabled, it's a seamless experience for kids who may not have a library card, and it lets schools leverage the investment that the local public library has already made in juvenile and YA content. And those titles appear side by side in Sora. We also have our 2 summer reading programs live right now, as well as the Harry Potter at Home program, which is still in progress. We also mentioned the Duke Classics set, which includes classics titles like Emma and Call of the Wild and Little Women, all on streaming right now. So here's how you get Sora. Sora is a district-wide implementation that uses school credentials to sign in under a single unified platform. So the first step is to have a district representative activate Sora by signing a usage agreement. You can send that person this QR code on the screen or using the activation URL. With that done, your IT contact will tell us how to set up your student sign-in process, and you'll generate awareness and excitement about your new custom digital collection. And we help with marketing. I think that was actually one of the questions, was how to promote ebooks. And that's something that we assist our partners with. After that, you can experience SOAR's no-cost content and add on your purchase content to create a custom collection that supports your district's unique reading objectives. So I hope that SOAR helps you engage with remote learners to alleviate the short-term challenges of limited budget and quarantine. However, it's also my wish that SOAR becomes part of your new normal over the long term to help students read more, whether that's in school or remotely. Thanks again for your time, everybody. It was a pleasure to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angela, and a huge thank you to all of our panelists. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing a link to today's slide presentation, a certificate of completion, and a video archive of today's webinar, which will also be posted at www.booklistonline.com/webinars. Please visit that same URL to learn more about Booklist webinars, view an archive of past webinars, or register for our upcoming webinars, like the ones you see here. Just as a reminder to all attendees, Booklist is totally free and open to all during this time. If you haven't already, be sure to check out the Booklist Reader, where Booklist contributors are posting weekly about all things books and library land. Some of our most recent posts include free educational resources available to you. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, and one more huge thank you to our incredible panelists, and a huge thank you to our sponsor, OverDrive Education. This concludes today's webinar.